Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathy Callahan Brady, and I'm the CEO of Frederick Innovative Technology Center, also known as FITCI. And today it's my honor and privilege to bring to you to Founder City with my guest, Ed Robinson. He is from Capacity Building Solutions as well as Vistage. And I'm so excited he'll be joining us today. And he has pulled together the most amazing CEOs in Maryland, and I'm going to let Ed jump right in, but I do have a couple housekeeping tips that I want to talk through. So at Founder City, we've worked hard to curate some of the best content to pull together this multifaceted resource, and you can find all of this at foundercity.com. Please check it out. We always want to pause and thank our sponsors. We love and we appreciate you guys so much. And of course, our partner at Betamore allows us to expand the reach to all Maryland companies. And this is making it a Maryland-wide event. And so thank you for that, guys. We also want to give a shout out about our pitch competition that we're doing. We're very excited about this. And all of this is in the spirit of connecting entrepreneurs with our investment community. All you have to do is go to foundercity.com, apply to pitch, and that will take you to a video-based pitch platform that we have invested in that's called Thumbraise. It's an application. You can submit your pitch, your investor deck online, and then you start interacting with the investor community. Then, of course, the pinnacle event we're very excited to bring to you is going to be a drive-through pitch event. And we're going to have it simulcast in both locations, Frederick as well as Baltimore, and more on that later today. But today it's my pleasure to introduce this session of Founder City's online learning series as we dive into a CEO roundtable led by one of Vistage's top executive coaches, Ed Robinson. For those of you guys who don't know, Vistage is an amazing, worldwide, largest executive coaching organization for more than 60 years. And Ed is not only a Vistage coach, facilitator, but also president and founder of an organization that he created in 2002 called Capacity Building Solutions. It focuses on business management, organizational development needs of small to medium-sized businesses. As an executive coach, Ed helps leaders across multiple industries and in companies with revenues up to 150 million. He has managed an annual sales contract worth more than 60 million. He designs and facilitates peer group learning experiences for CEOs, for presidents, for executive directors, and he creates leadership conferences. You might even be familiar with his books, Reflections on Life and Leading, or Unlocking Your Profit Potential. It's a look on social enterprise. So Ed says his personal goal is to make the world a better place, one leader at a time. And I have known Ed for many years. I've had the pleasure of calling him my coach and my mentor. And so I can tell you that all of this comes from his heart. Today, Ed joins Founder City as he facilitates a strategically picked panel of successful CEOs who are here to share their personal experiences, lessons learned during this extraordinary journey from startup to thriving and beyond. It's valuable insights for anyone on a similar path, especially those who recognize that it takes so much more to be a leader than simply being in charge. Founder City is empowering individuals to make the world a better place, one person, one company, and one community at a time. So please bookmark this link, share it with your friends, and thank you for joining us. Ed, the stage, so to speak, is all yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ed Robinson. Welcome to the Founder City CEO panel. You're looking at probably one of the luckiest guys in the DC Baltimore area. Why? Because I get to work with these folks. It really is a dream and a privilege to work with the folks I think are making a real difference in our local business communities. I've always had this feeling that real change happens at the grassroots level. And who affects the grassroots more than the entrepreneurs who build the businesses and organizations in their communities? And we've assembled this panel today of people with a wide variety of experiences and lots of success to share some wisdom with you today. So thank you for being here. And I hope you take notes. There's going to be a lot of wisdom shared here today. So with that, what I'm going to do is ask the panel to go around and introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their business, when they started their business, and just a quick lesson learned they've had in their journey so far. So let's start with you, Vlad.
Hey everyone, my name's Vlad Friedman, and I was a CEO for 26 years and in business for about, well, I'm dating myself, 30 years now. Originally started a technology company in the basement of my parents' house when I was 18 to pay my own way through college. Went through a lot of different industries, made a million mistakes along the way, had to transform the business many times over. So everything from software development to, technology for automotive logistics, and eventually I wound up building a pretty well scaled internet infrastructure business. I started with one employee in the basement, which was my dad, who worked for me the entire time, and grew it to about 100 people and 20 million in revenue. Met Ed actually in 2015, and he helped mentor me and structure the business for an eventual successful exit. And 2017, I was acquired by a private equity firm, and now I'm the CTO of that new business. And since I've joined, we've acquired 48 data centers and now have about 700 employees with a total of 64 data centers and 29 separate geographic locations. And we run the inner workings and guts of the entire internet. So it's been a fun and exciting journey. It's exciting to have my first job, which is what this is. And I'd say, the biggest lesson I learned along the way that I tell everyone is, the biggest mistake is being afraid of making a mistake. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to change your business. Don't be afraid to learn from what's coming at you. Just because you made a decision yesterday doesn't mean it's the same course that's going to take you to the place that you want tomorrow.
I never get tired of these stories, starting with one employee, which was your dad in your basement, to now an organization with 700 employees. What a difference you folks make in your communities. I've always wondered, Vlad, what it's like to have a performance review conversation with your dad.
It's tough. I think what was really important is understanding our roles up front. I mean, at work, we're at work. We're not family. At home, we're family, and we don't talk about work. And we're very clear from the beginning, I'm the CEO, you're the CFO, handle your respective area. And that actually helped us get along, because we weren't trying to step on each other's toes, because we each had our own functional area of responsibility. And, even as the business grew and scaled and he didn't have the financial background necessary to operate a business of, the size that we grew to, he was always still part of the process. And I wanted to make sure that he always felt included. So I wound up having a CFO, but he was in the weeds every day and felt like he was participating. So it really gave me an incredible experience of working with my dad, and we have a great relationship. Although we would come, toe to toe from time to time, just learning those boundaries was really important up front.
I can see, Dad, on a scale of a 5-point scale, I'd give you a 3.875, and you need to work. I'm just joking, but I watched you work with the old man, and just one of the many things that impressed me about you as a leader and a person, how you navigated that.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Jason.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jason PA. I'm the CEO of Versatech. I started my business in 2005. Similar to Vlad, I've never worked for anyone, so I started my business straight out of grad school. We are primarily a software development and IT infrastructure organization. We mainly focus in the federal government contracting space. We've supported agencies like the Food and Drug Administration. We've supported agencies like Department of Transportation. So, some of the systems we built actually impact the public safety, and some of the things probably some of you are driving in right now. We do a lot of things with 5-star crash rating and fuel emissions improvement. So you see all the manufacturers rushing to get to electric. We actually help the government manage the fuel emissions programs to make sure manufacturers are meeting those standards, as an example of what we do as an organization. I guess a lesson learned, or something I would share with the group is, anything is possible if you want it. You just got to be willing to put time, effort, and work into it. And there's no better time than the present to do that.
Don't be afraid of making mistakes, and anything is possible. two great pieces of advice to start this off with. James.
Hi, Ed. My name is James Allen Schultz. I am the namesake and co-founder of JamesAllen.com. We're an online retailer of diamonds and fine jewelry. The company was the precursor to James Allen, was born in my living room back in 1998 with my wife and I. I needed to buy a diamond engagement ring, and I shopped on eBay and I got a great deal, and I thought there might be an opportunity here. So we bootstrapped ourselves with $5,000 and bought another diamond and sold that, and then created the .com. We spent about 6 years growing the company and then in ourselves. And then in 2006, we took partners with an Israeli firm that was a diamond wholesale and manufacturing company. From 2006 through 2017, we grew the company. We went through friends and family fundraise. Then we did a private equity deal, and then we did another one. All said and done, we raised over $150 million. And then in 2017, the company was acquired by Signet, which is a publicly traded company that nobody's ever heard of, but they own Zales and Jared and Kay, and now they own James Allen. Fast forward to today, I still work at James Allen. I'm the Chief Customer Officer for the company right here in Frederick, Maryland, and I love my job, and it's great to have my cake and eat it too. So we built it, sold it, and we still get to be here. As far as lessons learned, I guess I would give you two. One, don't be surprised if your 3-year plan takes 20 years. Just continue to execute. And second, something that I learned was that whatever you might envision as success, make it bigger. You might even be able to do more.
You know, I've never been to Cape Canaveral to watch a rocket ship take off, but I did sit next to James while James Allen took off. And it was just powerful seeing the trajectory of that business and how quickly you guys grew and took over the marketplace. It was a privilege, James. You should be very proud.
Thank you.
Noah.
Cool. I'm Noah Burke. I am the co-CEO of OBO. We're a technology consultancy. So think of like Salesforce, HubSpot, Monday.com, where the company goes into organizations and helps figure out how to set up their entire sales, marketing, service, and technology stack. We're probably the youngest of all the companies here. I like to say we're still kind of in our adolescent stage. This is our 6th year. We're into our 6th year of business. We have about 34 employees now. I got this started when I was 31. I'm very, very fortunate to have an awesome co-founder where we both have our own swim lanes, where my responsibilities are in charge of sales, marketing, strategy, obviously vision, and leadership, along with my partner. But his responsibilities fall more into the operations, technology, and running those teams. And we have a clear delineation, clear swim lane, what we're both working on any given basis. I'd say one of the biggest lessons, this is my 3rd rodeo. I've tried doing it myself. I've tried having partners, and it, really comes down if you're able to find that partner who's a perfect complement to who you are. I would say that's one of the biggest takeaways I could share with all of you. But it's important not to just, go into it without really vetting who that individual is and making sure that you guys are both aligned around what you're trying to do and accomplish. But more importantly, you actually complement each other. Because it definitely reduces some of the burden you may have if you're a single founder versus if you have a partner you're working with.
I have to admit, having done this for a long time, that I've always been a bit skeptical of 50-50 partnerships. You, my friend, you and Rob are disproving that theory. And it's awesome just to hear how you talk about your partner and how you guys share those roles and responsibilities. You're real credit to each other. Okay, Yair.
Hey, I'm Yair Flicker. I'm the president and founder of SmartLogic. We are a company that builds custom web and mobile software applications for tech startups, and other fast-growing businesses. What we do is help these companies get to market more quickly and help them build their technology and software that they use to power their business. I started the company in 2005, so 16 years ago. I was 22, meaning I'm 38 now. And we've got 19 employees in the business. We're fully remote. Used to be headquartered in Baltimore, and now we're a fully virtual company. And one of the lessons I've learned is it is a marathon, not a sprint. Got to be in it for the long haul. Can't expect any quick wins, and just got to keep grinding and grow the business.
And I'm sure a lot of you folks out there have seen Yair around. I know he hosted a panel earlier on in this series, but he's very actively involved in the Baltimore entrepreneurial community. Rob.
Yeah, my name is Rob Ray. I'm the founder of Whitebox. I got started with my first company when I got out of high school. So at 18 in my parents' basement, I founded an IT consulting company, which took care of about 200 small businesses all over in Baltimore and Washington. Then I had this hobby of putting computers in cars when the only way to get digital audio in your car back in the late 90s, early 2000s was to put a full desktop PC in the car. And so this is before the iPods and iPhones came out. And so that's how I got started in e-commerce. So that turned into a business. And I decided to build some software for that company, mortgaged my house, took friends and family money. My net worth was about negative $500,000, which was crushing. That software product failed. And ended up building a bunch of software and systems to turn that company around. And we ended up digging ourselves out of that hole, quintupling our revenue. And I thought, well, hey, if these systems and software work this well for my company, why shouldn't we release this into a product and service that can help other brands grow? And so with that, my co-founders and I launched Whitebox in August of 2013. Again, leveraged myself up with a whole lot of debt. And got that company started. And so what Whitebox does is that we take care of e-commerce for large brands. And so we do two parts of that. We help brands sell more stuff, and then we also help them move that stuff. And the core of our company is technology. And so we're using technology to help these brands sell more things, and we're also using technology to drive efficiency and quality in our buildings. Whitebox started in a row house in downtown Baltimore, the third floor of a food distributor in Canton on Foster Avenue, for those of you that are here in Baltimore. We now have hundreds of people across 3 states. We have millions of square feet of warehouse storage to ship the products for our customers. And we have teams of software developers and data scientists that are help building the products for our clients. I think the biggest bit of wisdom that I'd share with founders, especially those that are in the early stages, one of the biggest mistakes I made in my first company was thinking, well, hey, if I share my idea with others, someone's going to go steal the idea, and that I think I lost a lot of really valuable advice that I would have otherwise gotten if I'd have been more open with folks and gotten feedback. And so, if that would be one piece of advice, that would be what I'd share. Is just be open and get advice from folks that can help you.
And if there ever was a person who deserved a success, Rob didn't know this, but we used to call him R squared in the Vistage group because his risk profile was amazing. And he's one of the most resilient people you'll ever meet.
Thank you, Ed.
About someone who put all the chips in. Just amazing and powerful to watch you navigate that journey. And where you are now, I smile every time I think about it. So I don't like panels where everybody gets asked the same question. And then by the time you're the 6th or 7th person, you say, well, all the good stuff was taken. And then we hear someone say the same thing. So I wanted to try to avoid that with this panel. So what I've tried to do is, given what I know about folks' businesses, is pick specific questions that were germane to their journey. So I'm going to start first with Jason and Yair. You guys haven't pursued outside capital. You've decided to self-fund your growth in your journey or use the banks to help you get there. Could you please tell us why and what that's been like and how that's helped or hurt you?
Sure. Yeah, I'll take a stab at that. So I have a services business. It's consulting. Those are companies that are generally not seeking external funding because of the way the financial model works. It's pretty simple. We sell our time, we sell our services, and the way the business grows is by hiring more people and charging a premium on the time. So it's a lot harder for a company like mine to scale than, say, Rob Ray's, than, say, Whitebox, where the marginal increases in revenue are not based off of how many people you have. So that's one thing. Historically, there has not been a tremendous amount of interest from VCs, private equity groups, and outside funders to fund consulting businesses. The other thing is, of course, control. With investors and other people on the balance sheet, I'd have to consider giving up control of the business, and it's not something I've really considered for SmartLogic. In the future, if I decide to start or co-found other businesses where the business model is different, then I'm sure it would make a lot more sense in those scenarios, in those cases, to seek external funding.
And do you think not having external capital, whether or not it was obvious to be able to access it at the time, did that slow your growth? Did that hinder your ability to scale the business?
For sure. Outside capital, as I'm sure the other folks on the call will tell us, allows you to run more experiments, allows you to hire more people, allows you to invest in growth. So it's certainly a trade-off.
How about you, Jason? You also decided to self-fund this thing, and you had a pretty fast trajectory there for a while. Tell us about that.
Well, for me, we're a services-based business, kind of similar to what Yair was saying. We're a little bit different, as we could use investment dollars, and we've thought about it, but it really hasn't aligned with where we were at the current time strategically. We tend to grow as an organization through bids and proposals. So it just hasn't always been a big need as we've been growing over the years. Clearly, in my industry, once you get to a certain size, it becomes a little bit harder to grow at a similar pace. When you're a $5 million organization and you win a contract that's worth $1 million, you've grown 20% right there. But when you're a larger business and you win $1 million contract, you might grow by 0.5%. So as we've scaled, I mean, clearly now looking back, it probably would have been nice to take on some investment dollars to help build out some capabilities that we could be using to go to market to differentiate ourselves. Has it been a hindrance? I would say no. I think there's still a great opportunity in my specific space of government contracting to be able to grow without actually taking on investment dollars. But where I want to take the organization, we're kind of at a point now where it would be very beneficial to have that type of investment come in so we could acquire a business or hire the right type of talent to take us to the next level.
Well, I know some of you out there listening, you've heard of the phrase a 10X business. I've been fortunate to watch Jason exceed 10X growth in my time working with him. One day I think that's probably going to be 20, 30, 40X, brother. So it's cool to see how you've grown that business so quickly. Now, there's also inorganic growth versus organic growth. Do you see possibly, and Yair, I'll throw you there too, that outside capital might be helpful from an inorganic growth perspective? Yes,
absolutely. That's where getting capital investment probably earlier on would have been a really smart idea. If you can get some outside investment to help you, say, acquire a company of similar size as your organization, you'll tend to double in size. You'll tend to pick up new capabilities, strengthen capabilities you may have. So there's a lot of benefits to the inorganic growth model. And, right now with being in a pandemic and being in COVID, putting bids and proposals in right now, the more traditional organic model is a lot harder, mainly because, people don't want change as much. So when you put a bid against an incumbent contractor who's been doing the same project, maybe okay, but well enough to not make the client, be completely dissatisfied, they're tending to pick to stay with them. So this inorganic model, because of the pandemic, actually has become even more advantageous to acquire those type of companies to help you expand and grow.
What about you, Yair? Could you ever see that?
Yeah, I think similar to what Jason was saying, money would get you access to acquire talent, companies, services, things, people, things like that you don't have access to internally through organic growth. So I think in that regard, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. Noah, tell everybody what's going on with those plants behind you. I just love.
Oh, you mean my hydroculture plants?
Yes, one of his businesses in the past.
Yeah, past business. So they all grow in this expanded clay. So they all have water level indicator gauges. You can't overwater, underwater them. They last forever. I know Yair has a few now these days. I think I got them in the hobby a while ago. This plant behind me is 11 feet. You can't see how tall it is. Unless I walk back and start giving you an idea of the height. So it's a fun hobby. I have plants everywhere. I think last count I had like 35 in my place.
Wow. More plants than employees.
What? Yeah, actually I do. Although our offices in Columbia has a lot of plants. And now since we're going through a redo of the office, me and my partner agreed I get to essentially triple the number because I'm trying to make it into like a WeWork in terms of number of plants they got there.
All right. So I want you referenced this earlier, but you started out your business launching with some help with some friends.
Correct.
Helped you launch the business. And then you ended up moving on to having a partnership with just one person, a good friend of yours.
Correct.
Tell us about how you navigate that. Going to friends who had a successful business, getting launched, navigating that relationship, and then now working closely with a partner who's also a friend. How do you navigate that successfully as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily set out to start a company. I originally was very happy in my career. At that time, I was back into enterprise sales. But my current business partner is one of those genius types. And I knew if I were to ever start a company again, I want to start a business with him. Two of my best friends run a really successful marketing agency. I think they're about 70, 80 people now. And they had approached us, although we'd talked about ideas, and they said, hey, why don't you guys start a company? This is the opportunity. Why don't you start a company around the sales and marketing alignment, whatever it's going to be in the end. We really didn't have a very good idea of what this company would be in the long run. But we said, sure, let's do it. I think in the beginning, when you're putting together relationships and you're putting together partnerships with friends, especially if they're putting some of the capital in to get you started, so we don't have to live off of ramen noodles. So in other words, they put in enough money that me and my partner could maintain our standard of living without having to eat the ramen noodles as if we didn't have any cash. I think there's a sense of, we're going to make it in 2 to 3 years and everyone's going to be whole and money is going to be coming in and we don't care about percentages of how much people own, et cetera. Well, I will tell you this, put a lot more thought into the future when you first do this and say, will you be happy? Let's say you do start making, let's say it takes you twice as long. Will you be happy with the structure that you set up? Luckily, these are, two of my best friends, and they're really interested in us being successful and happy as individuals. And there was a total of 4 of us, me and my current co-founder and co-CEO, and then 2 partners, more or less silent. And so ultimately what they did is they gave us cash. We gave them a stake in the business. And over time, we ended up realizing, that we've become very successful, but we ended up realizing over a period of time, it makes sense for me and my partner to maintain ownership, maintain control, and have it. And so there was a period where we were working to essentially exit my other 2 partners out of the business, although they still have a very small stake, which, rightfully so, in the business. But they're whole. They did very, very well for themselves, I'll say that. But it's always tricky. And I think be careful and pay attention when you're going through these agreements. Really think through the what ifs, both what if you are incredibly successful in the very beginning and faster than you thought, but also what if it's going to take you 2 or 3 times longer? And then are you happy in all those scenarios? It's easy to say I'm happy now. It'll be harder later down the road. I just happen to be fortunate that these are my best friends and we have great relationships. So we're able to talk through these items, and all ultimately worked out really well for each and every one of us.
And I have to tell you, having done this a while, I see a lot of relationships break apart over money. And what really impressed me is every conversation we had, you prioritized the relationship.
Yes.
Money was secondary. And as a result, I think you navigated some difficult conversations and maintained the relationship and the friendship.
Correct. Absolutely. And they're never easy. I mean, in 1 minute you're talking about life, and then you also have to separate and really the communication about the business and those items with your life side. And luckily it worked out well for everyone in the end, and everyone's happy, and we got it to where we are today.
Great, thank you. Vlad, I kind of joked earlier about the performance review for your father, but having worked once again with hundreds of businesses over the years, the family business dynamic can get difficult. It can be a challenge. So talk us through the decision of first to start a business with your father, and then how you navigated that over time in his changing role.
Sure. So, initially the decision was just caused by need. As I was getting started, I had no issues ever being the geek, but I really never tried to focus on the finances and, daily operations of the business. And quite frankly, at the time after I started the company, he was the first employee I could afford. So, so that made him employee number one by default. And that started as a part-time career, and then, eventually moved into a full-time career. But I think what I found over time, one of the toughest things that I mentioned before is just having a clear delineation of responsibilities. I made it very clear, it's my company, I'm the CEO, I will make the final call, and I appreciate your input. And at the same time, trying to balance that with some level of compassion and saying, he's my dad, and there are places where I knew that I needed to take the business that, while somebody else who may have not been as equipped to handle those responsibilities, I would have said thank you for your service and moved on. I wanted to make sure that I found good places for him to land so that he felt engaged and he felt happy, and really had a meaningful contribution in the journey so he could get to the end of it and feel good himself, right? And he did make a big difference in the business. Just because who else could you trust better with the finances of the business than family? So that made it really easy to make that decision. And I made sure he had the right support structure around him, to ensure the business had what it needed as well. So it's really a balancing act. It certainly had its challenging moments and it had its rewarding moments. I think looking back, I really wouldn't change the decision. I thought it's a wonderful experience and something that my dad and I still talk about, even though he's retired now. And I think if I would have hired somebody else along the way, they just would have been another employee in the journey, and I would have moved on and not really thought about it. So kind of taking that away, besides a successful exit, is probably one of the things I'll cherish throughout my lifetime.
Yeah, and I would say, just like Noah, I have a lot of intimate conversations with people in my role. And your dad was a topic of conversation a few times, but it was always a positive conversation. You were always looking out for your father, and valuing his contribution, which is credit to you. You once again prioritized the relationship, and made it work in the business. So that's a good lesson for folks out there. You can work with family, you can work with friends, but prioritize the relationship first and then work through the business issues. If you start from the business issues, it can create a lot of tension, especially when you start to have some success. Yeah,
and create those boundaries up front. That's important. So you're not fighting about them down the road. I have a saying, use it in business. I want to have all my toughest fights up front. If we have all our tough fights up front, we're not arguing down the road. And while we're going down the highway at 1,000,000 miles an hour trying to operate the business, we've already had all those conversations.
Yeah, I'm thinking funny. It's a bit of advice my sister gave me before I got married. She goes, just want to tell you this. You spend the first 2 years of your marriage negotiating the boundaries, and then the rest of your marriage trying to renegotiate the boundaries. So make sure you get those things established right up front, right? And that's good. That's good advice. All right, Rob and James, you guys took on outside capital. and you ended up giving up pieces of your business along the way. Rob, you're still in that situation. Tell us about that. Tell us about what it's like to take on that outside capital and give up parts of your business to grow and achieve your outcomes. James.
Well, so I think I mentioned, Michelle and I started the company with $5,000 in capital. And for the first 6 or 7 years, or 5 or 6 years, it was just us. And we didn't raise capital. Our ambitions, I think, were a bit more modest. But once we teamed up with the guys in Israel, there was a clear-cut strategy to build a company and exit it. That was kind of what we wanted to do from day one. And so we raised the first 10 million in friends and family, and then the 25 million, and then the 125 million. And fortunately for us, it was a Cinderella ending. When we were acquired for $328 million. And granted, we had all been diluted through these investment rounds, but it was still a life-changing amount of money for us. And there's a calm confidence that comes with knowing that you are going to be okay. So for us, raising that capital, giving up that control was the right thing to do. If I look back at, what is there anything I would have done differently? I was a member of Ed's group at Vistage through the seminal years of the growth, and we were kind of a bankrupt company. We were living off of debt. We had to raise money. These rounds were not a luxury for us, and that type of risk, although it worked out in the end, there was a lot of anxiety and a lot of uncertainty, and I wish we could have achieved the same goal without having to have done that. But that's where we were. So regarding partners, when we joined up with Israelis, Oded took over the role as CEO. I took the role as president, and it was great. It was great. It's kind of like what Noah was saying. I'm a doer. I can actually get things done. I can implement. I'm tactical. Oded was a visionary. He really wanted to be the king of the mountain. And so by, putting his talents with my talents, along with a whole team, and one of the things I would speak to is, if you build and scale a company, you may not need to hire a new CEO, but you, as smart as you may be, you can't be great at everything. And so bringing on a strong C-suite is inevitable, and letting go of those responsibilities can be difficult, but it's important. So for us, it was great. For us, they were the right decisions, and I would recommend to anybody to hire talent as early, and don't be afraid to let things go.
And I hope the audience was listening. The initial $5,000 investment led to a company being sold for $328 million. My goodness, that is
and I won't be a braggart, but it was $328 million enterprise value, which means we got to keep the $60 million in the bank account too.
I love it when you talk accounting, James. That's an inside joke, everybody. All right, Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I think when you talk about outside capital, I think you're really talking about a change in control. And so, and I think for me, my first two companies were very much lifestyle companies where, I did what I wanted to do. I had flexible hours, and I got to have some fun customers, but it wasn't like, I kind of read about the Apples and the Googles of the world and the Facebooks of the world. And I was like, I really want to know what that's like. I want to know what it's like to go work for a big company. I want to learn. And I've kind of learned everything I can learn about. I mean, that's not quite true. I hadn't learned everything I could learn about a lifestyle company, but I just wanted to do something different. And I was, still young. And so that's where I really decided to go take this outside money. And I think what that afforded us was of course, the growth capital that everyone's talking about, so you can stomp on the accelerator and go faster. But for me, I think the most interesting thing about it was the ability to work with really smart people, certainly smarter than I am, and be able to learn from those folks. And so, my co-founders, they certainly would have gone, if we weren't in a high growth company, they would have gone to go do something else. once we were able to get our first rounds of capital, we were progressively able to add smarter and smarter folks to the team. And that really, that money and that growth that we were able to achieve really kept letting us snowball into getting smarter and smarter people. So other examples, we added some folks from Millennial Media who had, enormous amounts of advertising knowledge, and they IPO'd with the market cap of roughly around $2 billion. And so some of those folks came on our team as board members and advisors. Some of those folks came on as full-time employees. We also brought in some folks from executives from Amazon that came to join the company. And I bring those up because those folks wouldn't have been attracted to the company if we hadn't have had the growth capital and we hadn't have had the growth. And so that was really the win that we were able to get. Plus, the economics of our business model don't work at small scale. They have to be larger scale. You can't. Whitebox doesn't work if we only have a handful of clients. So. That was really about the decision. So I think you have, when you're giving up these pieces of equity, you either are doing it to get investment dollars, or you're doing it to help incentivize your team. And so we, of course, did that to get the growth dollars, but we also did that to incentivize the team and recruit this talent. So we built an options pool. All of the employees at our company get stock options as is right now, so that they participate in the success of the company. And so that's been one of the biggest benefits for me is from the outside capital. And then of course comes, I'd never had a board before, so all from advisors to boards to team members, it's been great to be able to attract that outside talent.
I remember sitting with you talking about giving up the CEO role and going outside, and that wasn't an easy decision, but you really thought it through and put your ego aside, and clearly the results demonstrate that Marcus was a good decision. What was it like to step away from being the guy?
Oh, it was really hard. I mean, I think running my own company since I was 18, I've always made all the decisions, and I've all of the stress of running the companies and fundraising. It's been, nonstop 80-hour weeks, crushing stress. And it was very challenging to both turn off and then also release that control of saying, okay, it's time for a fresh perspective and somebody that's done this before. And so Marcus has helped a number of companies grow. He was the leader of Millennial Media for North America, helped them IPO, and he helped another company, another Baltimore company called Media Glue, get acquired and then so he's done a lot of great things, both in his career and then also adding to our leadership team. So it's been, as much as it was a hard decision, it's been phenomenal to watch a different leadership style and see how he's been able to continue to grow the company.
How about you, Vlad? You ended up selling the company and you served in a different role. What was that like for you?
Well, the KPIs and measurements certainly change. I think I was like a lot of people here, is working 80 hours a week, burning the candle at both ends. And, that takes its toll after a while. But a couple of things that private equity really brought to us were they really open a lot of doors, right? It's not just talent. They're opening doors to customers. They're opening doors to opportunities. They're opening doors to new partnerships. I mean, just things that I could never reach on my own are now a phone call away from one of our board members. So that's really been very interesting. But I think the big thing about the measurement changing, that's something that's a little bit hard to kind of get used to. I remember, when I was running the business, I was hyper focused on NPS and employee happiness. And those things are still really important, where I am at DataBank. It's just now the KPIs are more around, what's your EBITDA? What are your bookings? What are your sales? And now NPS is the leading indicator to how our financials are doing, right? So it's like we're now looking at things in a different perspective, because you're really held to, accountable to a number when you're working with private equity, but you need to balance that with the happiness of your customers and your employees, because it's very hard to hit your number if that's all you're focused on. So it's really been a change in perspective. It's really been interesting to also see kind of these roll-up strategies from private equity firms where they're looking to take multiple companies together, take costs out of the business to kind of synergize and, buy them at a better rate than the actual contract price. And it's fascinating how it works, because you really can take one and one, put them together, and get three out the other side, because have more efficient systems, have more efficient processes. You don't need to have, the same function across the business. And the other thing I'd tell folks to really, watch for, if you are going to look for private equity, try to find a way to create an annuity somehow within your business. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned, because I transitioned from a services business to a monthly reoccurring revenue business. And if you can actually create monthly reoccurring revenue with long-term contracts, investors want to buy annuities. So treat your business, package your business up as an annuity, and you will become much more attractive to private equity. And when they take that annuity and combine it with another annuity and extract the costs that are not needed in both organizations, you can really build something of scale that's great.
That's awesome. Manna from heaven, recurring revenue. So James, you stepped aside and let Odette run a business and served in your role, but you also had the added complication of working with a global company and global investors. What was that like, stepping aside and having a lot of decisions made in Israel?
It was interesting. From day one, when we started James Allen, we had three offices. We had an office in Midtown Manhattan, where we did all of our manufacturing and fulfillment. We had the customer service center here in Frederick, Maryland, where we still are today. And then we had our marketing and our IT folks in Israel. And so this kind of distance learning or distant communication was baked in to the company from the very beginning, and we had to get used to it. Today we are owned by Signet. Signet's in Akron, Ohio. So we have another location, and then we do all of our photography, and we have 300 people that work for us in Mumbai. So we're really spread out everywhere. As far as working with Odette, I think I've already mentioned, he was a great synergistic partner. We all found our lane, including my wife Michelle and myself and the rest of us, and we stayed in it, and we didn't have much of an overlap or much of a fight for control, and we were always consultative with each other, and nobody was blocked out of any conversation. I would also add that it was personally very fulfilling to see different cultures, because I don't want to overly characterize anybody, but Israelis in general are not Americans. They're different. They think differently. And I think they're different in business. And so that was really something that I think helped me to see a different perspective, a different management style, and ultimately, the sum of those different personalities and philosophies was a good thing.
Yeah, I hope what everyone's seeing here and hearing here is you have this stereotype of the egomaniac business leader. There's no misplaced ego on this panel. And putting what's best for the business, for your customers, for the organization first, and subjugating your ego to that really accelerates your success, doesn't hinder it. But there's a lot of entrepreneurs whose ego gets in the way of their success and their ability to grow. Nobody on this panel today. And that's why it's so enjoyable to work with you. We're focused on the right things, right? All right, so Jason and Vlad, how hard was it to build leadership depth when you grow so quick? And James, if you want to, everybody wants to throw in here, but when you're growing so rapidly, it's almost like you're always out growing the capability of the people you have working for you. Then you have to get another skill set. How did you manage that? How are you managing that the needs of the business are always exceeding the talents of the people you have working for you?
Jason, you want to go first?
I can go first. Well, it's not easy at all. It's very hard to figure out, you had somebody doing really good work for you, doing a great job, but you've grown so fast that you're you've gone beyond their capacity and their capabilities. And over time, you just have to you got to have those tough conversations with folks. I think I guess the better the relationship you have with those around you who are taking this journey with you, the more realer conversations you can have. So for some people on my journey, they are still with me. They're just in different roles. And others, have decided to move on. And it's just hard to manage it in some ways because there's a lot of emotions tied to some of the folks when they've been with you since day one, but you just outgrown them and they're struggling, the business is struggling, and it's not a good situation. So I just always feel like just being honest, try to be kind, and just be open and honest with folks is the best way of doing it. And I think when I've done that effectively, I will say, the results have always turned out very well for all parties. So some are still with me today, and some have moved on to positions and roles that were better suited for them. So.
And you also learned some lessons that sometimes hiring somebody for where you think you want to go doesn't always work out as well, right?
Yeah, there's always the other side of the coin, which is true. Sometimes you can hire someone thinking that's what you need for where you're going, and you find out, halfway through their tenure with you that, whoa, this was not what we really needed. We needed that. But I think that's just the basic evolution of a business. That's the growth of a leader. That's the growth of a business. You're going to hire people sometimes who have all the right intentions, but you're not ready to really leverage their skill set because they're, for my industry, it's usually when you have somebody coming from a large organization into a small business organization, it's two completely different animals. And, people have more resources available in large businesses, and then a small business, oh no, you do that. It's not, there's somebody else who could do that for you, as an example. So that's definitely another part of the equation too. I mean, if you look at the path in your journey as you're growing your organization, as always an opportunity to learn and grow and try to find the spirit of why you're going through something and what you're supposed to learn through that time, you always will grow, and you'll end up building the team as you go, and the people who are supposed to be there with you will be there, and the people you need will somehow show up surprisingly. Never on your time, but they do show up.
Well, one of the many things I admire about you is you're willing to go out there and look for the talent and pay for talent, and be willing to roll those dice.
Thank you, Ed.
Vlad, how about you?
So, I love the old saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you need to do a better job hiring. I think that was one of the lessons I had to learn along the way, to kind of put the ego aside and, hire people that were much smarter and much more talented than me in their respective areas. Where I started, that journey with hiring, I just kind of hired who was available, who I could afford at the time. And at one point, I decided to bring in an executive out of a much larger scaled business who kind of taught me the way of how to really focus on attracting the best people to your business. And, what you need to do is take a look at what you do every day. And if you are busy for 80 hours a week, which I was, look at which of those functions you should be hiring someone for, so that you can focus your time on, the three most critical things as a CEO, which is customer acquisition, customer retention, and operational excellence. And if you're not spending your time on those three things, hire someone else to spend the time on everything else that you're doing, so you can focus on those three things. So in there, hiring is your most important job. And at the same time, you want to attract smart people to the business. One of the two strategies I use were pretty simple. One, created a shared success model, as others on here have, talking about, an options pool for my key players, because there were times I couldn't afford to pay what some of the really large companies would, but I could show them the journey of what our plan was, what our exit was, what their stake in that would be. That would actually get them really excited, both about the mission, right, what we were working on and how we were trying to change the world, and at the same time, what their share and how they would be rewarded if we were successful in that mission. And the second part to that is have high levels of accountability around your leadership team. Smart people want to work with smart people. And if you leave folks around that everybody knows are incompetent and you finally fire them and somebody comes to you and says, what took you so long? That means you took too long to act as a leader. So make sure you have that with your team. Drive that level of accountability. Make sure they have that with their team. And when you start leadership from accountability from the top down, but decision making has to come from the bottom up, from the people that are closest to the actual work. What you start to do is you start to create this culture of high performance when you're really attracting people to your business because they're excited about what you do. They get to make decisions. They know that they're working with other smart people. And at the same time, they get to share in the success of the business. And if you can kind of create those elements, you actually start to become more of a magnet that draws people in versus having to hire recruiters where you're going out and casing the marketplace trying to find new people.
Awesome. You know, we have this phrase in real estate called highest and best use for a property. That's what I like to tell leaders of an organization. What is your highest and best use to the organization? Then build around that. Rob, I'd like you to chime in because you started with some friends. It was kind of a lifestyle business initially, as you alluded to. Then all of a sudden you put your foot on that gas pedal and not everybody could keep up. And you had to build this team real quickly.
Yeah, as you said, we went from just a few people to hundreds of people very quickly. And I think the two things that helped us were we hired leaders before we needed them. And people had given me that advice before. And it was like a big pill to swallow because it was expensive from a cash standpoint and an equity standpoint to go bring on those leaders before we needed them. But that was really key because those leaders helped us make sure that we didn't make bad hires going forward. And then when we went to go sign that big client, we had those folks on the team ready to go. And I think the other thing is build a process for hiring and interviewing. Like I think other than the things that are mentioned, I think that's a big piece is the process around interviewing and hiring. So for us, like one of the things that helps us is we have 4 people that interview every single person that comes to the company. And we ask every single candidate questions that are oriented around our core values at the company. And so I think that's really helped us avoid some bad hires.
Awesome. Now, Yair and Noah, you guys haven't had to build a C-suite yet or a senior leadership team. You're building a management infrastructure beneath you. There's still a lot of dependency on you, but you're putting the pieces in place to have other people doing some of the managing in the organization. Talk to us about that and how hard it is to be the person in the middle of everything, who's on top of everything, having to step back and yield control and begin to trust that other people can step up. You're muted.
You're muted. I'll go ahead. I do find it difficult to focus on strategy and execution at the same time. I'd echo what other folks have said on the call. You know, the faster you can farm out the tasks that you need to execute on to other folks on the team, the faster you can hire other people to handle those tasks, and the more it frees up the executive's time to focus on strategy, planning, and hiring and recruiting and everything else that is so critical to the business. I found that for me personally, it's been a lot of trial and error. Don't always knock it out of the park on the first swing when it comes to hiring. But if I don't take that swing, then there is a 0% probability that I'm going to knock it out of the park. So for me, it's definitely been important to continue pushing on the hiring, taking those experiments and using the data that I collect from the hiring experiments to continue to calibrate and better sense what I need to grow the company. So it's been a lot of trial and error. But again, the more trials and errors I find, then the better I get at hiring in the future and finding out what the needs are and growing the company.
Yeah, and it's difficult in a smaller company to find people that can meet your expectations, your level of commitment, your level of knowledge and experience. How do you navigate that? Like having such high expectations that you have of yourself and trying to transfer that to building the beginnings of a management.
I think it does require a lot of oversight, a lot of regular meetings. So, good cadence of meetings, some focused on tactical things so that I can regularly convey my expectations. It requires a lot of prep from me. Before I have meetings with my direct reports, I'm usually reviewing the agendas and commenting and coming prepared to the meetings that they have prepared for before I have a chance to review the agenda. So it does require a lot of preparation, and so that I don't roll into a meeting unprepared and then caught off guard. So lots of prep on my part.
Noah.
Yeah, so we're definitely in an interesting phase in our business as we're building this management layer. Obviously, myself and Rob can't manage, all 34 people on our own. We spent a lot of time looking at the structure of companies like ourselves. Like, how do we want to grow up? What would the structure be? And we identified, we really want to position ourselves as a consultancy. So how does like a Deloitte work? How does an Accenture work? How do they, people would get promoted and rise up through the organization? So we spent a lot of time analyzing and say, okay, if someone comes into the organization, what are their paths for promotion? How can they grow? We ended up coming up with multiple different career paths based on what they want to do. Not everyone has to go into management. Like, you want those individual contributors who are just awesome at what they do. So we have an individual contributor path. We have a manager path. We have even a third path, what we call client engagement. Essentially what we identified is really our client engagement, what we now call growth managers or senior growth managers. Those really are essentially like running their own little mini business. They're responsible for their profit and loss. They're responsible for their clients, responsible for upselling. They're responsible for the team members they have. They're responsible for their own cost of goods, and really understanding, hey, how do we make this team as successful as possible? So we trained our managers, and then those managers do one-on-ones with their team. So we first started, especially my business partner, by really leading by example, training the managers, doing one-on-ones with them, and then doing one-on-ones with their one-on-ones, where they could then go ahead and show what are the proper questions, how do you want to go through this, really a lot of structure behind it. It wasn't a simple process. It definitely took, I'd say, 3 to 6 months just to get them comfortable before they were kind of on their own. We now have a pretty clear-cut pathway for people to be promoted into roles where they're managing other people. We've also had some people who were in those roles, who are running teams, and say, I don't like that anymore. And we had a role they could move back into as an individual contributor. And so it's a matter of making sure you identify those people in advance. So we know who are currently our analysts and our consultants and our lead consultants who are good candidates to be moved into essentially a project team lead. We then have pathways for people who want to move up and maybe have multiple teams they want to eventually run. So I think you probably said earlier, as a professional services firm, what Yair was mentioning, our growth is limited based on the people we hire. So our people really are our business. Our business literally goes, proverbially, we're out the door every day, and we just hope they come back, because without them, we can't necessarily grow. And so really, I think from the standpoint, like, scale and obstacles that, you may face is really having those expectations. People don't necessarily just want to be part of a company who isn't necessarily doing interesting work, isn't necessarily growing, but a place they feel like is growing, where they're one of the best at what they can do, and they're one of the best companies in the market. And so we really strive to continually being better. I think overall, if you have a path and you're able to put people on it, I think you're going to start seeing your efforts come to fruition.
What I really admire and appreciate about what you guys do is, my mentor told me when I first started many years ago, the leader's job is to unlock the potential of the individual, sometimes potential they don't even see in themselves. And the fact that the culture you've built with the staff and the average age of your staff and how they've stepped up to the challenges that you put in front of them has just been really remarkable to watch and empowering to watch. People, people are capable of great things.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably a lot of younger people who are listening today. Our managers, some of them are in mid-20s, managing other mid-20-year-olds. It's not about your age. It's about, your ability, your effort, what you're putting into it, your mindset. And so don't sell yourself short.
And you notice that Noah said one of my favorite words, everybody on this panel will smile, one-to-one. One of your most important jobs is one-to-ones.
Yes.
KPIs, repeat after me. But I'm always fascinated by the leader who's growing a company, especially a fast-growing company who complains about meetings. Get over it, folks. When you grow a business, it stops being about you doing. It's about you managing and leading it. Often that takes place in a meeting. So your job is to participate in, lead, and perform in meetings. Embrace it. Don't resist it. Okay.
I'd also add that meetings don't have to be stodgy either. I mean, it can be a walking meeting. Like we do one of the things that we do at our buildings, we have some of our meetings walking. We have a giant warehouse and we'll go have a walking meeting. So it doesn't have to be like the typical grind of a meeting, I think.
No, I mean,
keep it fun.
Have fun with it.
Yeah.
Do crazy stuff, right? Get people focused, right? But your job is to actually lead successful meetings, whatever that means and however you get there. You're supposed to get everybody on the same page working together. All right, so James, Vlad, and Rob, we talked about this a little bit, but I just want you to expound one more time. What's it like to work with big money people? Like, it's a little bit of a culture clash, isn't it? You're a founder, you're an entrepreneur, and all of a sudden you're in the room with the money guys. And the money guys typically look at the lens of the business through finance. And what's that like, and how'd you navigate that? Let's start with you, James.
So we did 2 rounds. I'll make a few comments. When you go to raise money, one of the first decisions we had to make was, did we want to go out and do it by ourselves, or did we want to hire one of the big banks? And we hired one of the big banks. And so basically they put together a 50-page deck, and the 3 of us all went out and bought brand new suits, and we went up to New York. We went up to New York to do a road show. They wanted us to go out to Silicon Valley as well, but we said, let's start in New York. And we went up to New York for a week, and they sent out 60 presentations, and we gave 20 face-to-face meetings with all of these private equity firms from all over the country. And when it was all said and done, we came out with nothing. Nobody made an offer. Vlad is right on point when he says recurring revenue. That's all anybody wanted to hear about. That's all anybody wanted to invest in. And they felt that the lifetime value of our customer and our business proposition was kind of a one and done, because we were selling 95% engagement rings. So we had to go out and find that money on our own. And we did. We actually were one of the very first investments from a brand new fund called Israeli Growth Partners. And Oded, to his credit, found these guys and knocked on their door and pitched them what we were doing. We didn't have any problems with them. They were not heavy-handed. They did not try to come in and control the business. But I will say that there was a certain amount of anxiety, because when you take money from these guys, you have an expiration date. They're not there to just let you spend the next 20 years trying to be successful. And so you have a pre-negotiated agreement that, they're going to put X in and they're going to get Y out. But in our case, I think we had 4 years. It might have only been 3 years for that to pay them back, to raise another round or to do some type of an exit. And if we didn't do that, they took over. They had the right to take over the company and liquidate it, to pay themselves back. So that pressure in and of itself was a bit unnerving. But fortunately, one of the lessons we also learned is that once you raise money, it gets easier, at least in our case, to raise more money, because you kind of get legitimized when they come in and somebody writes you a check for $25 million. And then, so it was kind of first round happened and we fought and really didn't know if we were going to get it. And then the second round happened within a year later. And then we got acquired within 6 months of the second round. So that was
Rob. What's it like, the money guys, Rob?
I think at first it was very intimidating, because you go into a meeting with these folks who have more zeros than I've ever dreamed of, and I think it's intimidating at first. But I think really, for the most part, it's been a lot of resources that we wouldn't have had access to. Like we've had some great board members join us that have come along with their investment. And they have brought some board observers, which have added, not only the board members themselves add a lot of value, but they have also brought some board observers that sit in on our board meetings and inject new ideas and actually do work to help the company grow. And as much as, some feedback might be painful, I think everyone's incentives are aligned, right? We all want our equity to grow. We all want the company to grow. I think I've heard stories of that necessarily, not being the case where you aren't necessarily aligned with your investors, but we've been fortunate enough to not have that type of friction, and it's been a very positive experience for us.
Awesome. And Vlad, I remember all your trips to go to New York, talking to private equity guys, talking about the business. What has it been like for you, a guy to have to do that deep dive in finance with these folks?
It's very similar to the story that James is talking about. I had to get an education very quickly, going from being a geek to understanding the numbers. And same kind of story. I don't know if I bought a suit or not, but I had one in the closet. But the same roadshow and talking to investors. And I had a little bit of a different experience where I actually went out to raise capital or potentially sell the business once. And I actually failed at it the first time, after going through probably 30 to 40 management presentations. But what I did from that was I learned everything that the investors were looking for. I found every single question I couldn't answer. I found every measurement they wanted to track within the business. And over the course of the following 3 years, I actually set up the business to answer every single one of those questions, so that when I went out the next time, it was just, you got a question, here's the answer. Because generally a lot of these folks, as Rob said, they're looking at the world in a very specific way with financial numbers. They have funds. Those funds have time horizons. They have to hit internal rates of return. There's all these terms that you learn along the way. And if you can actually speak to them in their language, it gives you instant credibility when you're in the meeting. So first of all, like James did, hire a banker. That was a transformational process because I just needed an education. And I think all of us do when we work as founders in our business, because we don't work in that world every single day. And then, secondly, make sure you have answers to all the most important financial questions that they're going to be asking you. And maybe the third piece, and this maybe made it a little bit less intimidating for me, I spent time on reverse diligence as well. I wanted to know who was buying the business. I wanted to know what the legacy would be. I wanted to make sure this wasn't just, buy it, chop it up for parts and sell it. And that those people had a longer term vision and strategy. And by talking to that many people and being prepared and being attractive, it made it easier that I kind of had a say in who the eventual acquirer was of the company. So look to set yourself up for that level of success, so that your legacy can live on beyond you as the founder of your business.
Well, I like for both Vlad and James, who had very successful outcomes financially. You did at first. You went to talk to these people, and you were getting no takers, and it must have hurt, right? You take things personally.
I had the same experience too.
You had to develop a thick skin, right? And then use it as a learning opportunity to get better. You can't, at some point, especially if you're looking for outside people to come and help you support and grow your business, you have to be willing to listen to the feedback, embrace the feedback, and learn from it. And you don't hit a home run every time you get a chance.
I probably made the money part sound easy. Like we were like, I probably did 100 or so more pitches, and the majority of them were a no, and it was hard. So.
But you learn from that. I remember from my first time out, I had this executive in residence from the private equity firm sit down with me over dinner and say, "Why are you running a lifestyle business?" And I said, "What do you mean? I'm working 80 hours a week. What kind of lifestyle business is that?" He goes, "Where's your product packaging strategy? How are your COGS and your revenue? Why are they going like this instead of going like this as you're starting to achieve scale? What are your unit economics? How well do you know your business? Show me your contract waterfall. Show me your, cohort analysis with revenue by band and types of customers and their average lifetime value and how much churn you have." And all of a sudden my eyes opened up like, wow, I don't know any of these things. I am running a lifestyle business. So, like Rob said, like you go through those conversations, you fail a little bit and you're like, okay, great. What did I learn out of this experience? So that, person number 2 is a different conversation than, call it person number 99, because by the time you're getting to person 99, you sound like a genius, not because you are, but just you learned along the way. So don't let it get to you. Just use every single one of those meetings as an opportunity.
One other thing I was just going to add here, that if you don't get a banker, like you mentioned that you had an executive coach that came from your banker. If you don't get a banker, get somebody who can be an advisor to you that's done this before.
100%.
And so like I would not have been able to do this without our, team of advisors, Ed being one of them, but there were a handful of other folks like our current board member, Steve Root, and a handful of other folks that were critical to making it happen. And that had been in dozens, if not hundreds of those types of meetings that I was going through.
I'm smiling thinking, James, do you remember our immersion therapy on business finance?
A little bit. So
We had a lot of fun talking business finance many years ago. But he was an apt pupil.
Yes, I remember after our first meeting, you bought me a book and told me to read it. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up with kind of the final couple of questions. So, and we start with you, Yair. What do you see as your future plans as an entrepreneur and business leader? And what excites you about the current business environment?
Well, the current business environment, it seems like there's tons of funding for new startups, for new businesses, not just tech startups. There's so much growth. The economy, there's bifurcation in the economy, but there does seem to be a large segment of it that is growing, and a lot of growing industries. So that's really exciting. For my future, for my business, I haven't hit the point that a lot of the other folks on the panel have hit of the fast, rapid growth, and I'd like to see that happen. Or for myself, maybe it is another business, getting involved with other entrepreneurs, other businesses that have a clearer path for that type of rapid growth trajectory.
Great, thank you. Jason, what do you see as your future plans as a business leader and entrepreneur? What excites you about the current business environment?
Well, what excites me with the current business environment is, I think there's a lot of great opportunity, especially for technology companies, as we come out of this. So I'm very excited about just the opportunity that's going to be out there in terms of being able to grow and solve problems for clients that we don't have today. I'm also excited. I also know that in times like this, usually strong businesses survive. And I believe that we are one of those. And hopefully some of the organizations we have to battle with a lot that tend to lower the price in the market will be weeded out over the next few years. So I'm excited about the business environment changing and the opportunity that is out there for companies like mine to grow and expand. Now, I forgot your first question, Ed. I was asking the second one.
Well, you asked me the second one too. What excites you about the environment?
But my future plans, for me, I am very excited about growing my business. I have a goal to get my organization to 100 million in revenue. We are 30% there. We were as close as 40% at one point. So, we still have some work to do, but that's always been my goal. My passion is to get there. So, that's what I'm working towards. And I think the new and business environment and everything changing and the heavy reliance on tech now compared to in the past is going to be very beneficial to me and my organization.
Noah.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty excited for the future here. Especially in the type of business that we're in, where we digitize sales, marketing, service, and operations for clients. There's more demand out there. Pretty much every company has a need around what we do and what we provide. Really as the future for us, we have to grow as our business. In order for us to keep our talent, we have to continue giving more opportunities to the team members we have. And that means growing, that means scaling, that means kind of taking our business to the next level. So we're still what I like to consider an adolescent stage. We're still going through a lot of learning lessons as we're powering past where we are now into the next phase of our business. So we actually recently set up a residency program for new people, because we struggle right now. It's both a blessing and a curse. There's not enough people out there who do this work. Well, there's not enough people for me to hire to go do this work, so we have to train them all. And so we set up a residency program to start really training these individuals up who can then join our teams, which is actually requiring a lot of investment on our behalf, because we're bringing these people on before really we can bill them, before they're even billable hours. So they're essentially an expense. And so, yeah, I think we're entering an incredible period of time for business owners, entrepreneurs, to really go and build something great. And I'm excited to be part of it.
Rob.
E-commerce, as everyone knows, with COVID has exploded. And even before COVID came around, e-commerce was growing at 16% year over year. So that, plus the outside capital and the teams that we've added, make Whitebox a very exciting place to be. And the more people we add to our team, the bigger we grow. The more we're able to do stuff like add data scientists and robots and things like that. So I love learning, and I'm continuing to enjoy that. And I think I'm still young, so I imagine I'll have time for a few more times at bat. What that is, I'm not quite sure, but for right now, I'm enjoying watching the growth. And there's not too many industries that you can be in that grow at the size that e-commerce does. So yeah, I think that's where I am.
You got your timing right, my friend. Vlad.
So I think I agree with Jason. We're, kind of reaching the point now where the strongest have survived, and now is our opportunity to thrive. We work with some of the largest companies in the world, and I got to tell you, everybody's bullish, everybody's excited, everybody's investing, and that means that there's opportunity for all of us to kind of capture that, that wave that's coming. What gets me excited about, DataBank and where I'm at, I mean, we're kind of the team that's defining what the future of the internet and what internet infrastructure will be. So that's kind of cool to be, part of that, to kind of define what happens from the time that you pick up your cell phone to the time that, your app does something with it. So that's kind of an exciting opportunity. But I think, I would say the biggest advice I'd have for everybody as an entrepreneur now is, I hear people say all the time, well, this idea has been thought of and that idea has been thought of. But I like to think, there's tons of great ideas that are conceived every day, but there's very few that are executed well. Just start now. If you've got a great idea, don't wait. Don't be afraid. Just pick up, go, give it a try. If you fail, adapt. And there's so many opportunities. You're not going to get to the right answer the first time out the gate. Just iterate your way there. And over time, you'll reach that right answer. And this is the time, during an economic recovery where, everybody's going to rise. Everybody's got an opportunity to grow. So just be a part of it.
James, bring us home.
Well, we were acquired 3.5 years ago, and the founders all had 3-year contracts. So we were kind of obligated to stay for 3 years, but that's over, and I'm still here, and so is Odette, and so is most of the rest of the team. I made the internal bargain that as long as I enjoyed what I did and I added value to the organization, that I would stay, and that's why I'm still here. And I foresee that for the next couple of years, I will probably continue to stay because I love the company. We're doing great, and I still think we have a lot of trajectory in front of us. After that, my wife bought this 18,000 square foot mansion in Frederick that she wants to turn into a premier wedding venue. So I might be hosting weddings. Oddly enough, if I spend 20 years helping people get engaged, maybe I'll spend the next 20 years helping them get married. But I think that something maybe a little more modest and a little more local would be a nice change of pace. As far as the business environment, e-com is on fire. That's obvious. I think what excites me personally, though, and one of my kind of levels of interest is in artificial intelligence and machine learning, and how that's going to impact businesses over the next 10 years. As an anecdotal example here at James Allen, we're We're recording all of our phone calls, transcribing them using Google tools, feeding them into a machine learning algorithm, and then spitting out recommended answers for our agents. And so as somebody types a question, AI is telling the agent what the right answer is, giving them an option to push that. And I think that's just the very beginning of where we're going to go with this in all industries. And that's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you to every one of the panelists. It's amazing how quickly 90 minutes can go by. I started this panel today telling you I'm the luckiest guy around. I think the last 90 minutes has demonstrated why. I get to work with and alongside some pretty exceptional people, not just really good business people, but good human beings. And that's the story I want told about entrepreneurs in Baltimore, in DC, and everywhere. This is the group of people who changes the world. Let's never forget that. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Founder City. Thank you, Bettamore. Thank you, Fitzy. It was a privilege and honor to do this panel today. And I look forward to future conversations.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks.